You're in the kitchen, maybe midway through chopping an onion or checking a timer, and your 4-year-old asks, "Where is the cat?" You tell them she's under the sofa. 10 seconds pass. You hear a small shuffling sound in the hallway. They aren't even looking at the sofa. They're just standing there, one hand on the doorframe, looking directly at your hands. "Where is the cat?" You say it again, a bit slower this time. They don't move. They just shift their weight from one foot to the other, watching the way your mouth moves when you speak. Their eyes aren't searching for a cat. They're locked on your face, waiting for the exact same sequence of words to come out. Where is the cat? By the 4th time, it feels like a glitch. It's easy to think they aren't listening or that they're trying to be difficult. But if you watch their fingers, they're often picking at a loose thread or tracing the pattern on the floor. There's a specific kind of internal tension there. For a child, the world is mostly a blur of things they can't control. They don't know why the sky changes color or why the car makes that loud thud over the driveway. Everything is a bit too fast and a bit too unpredictable. But this conversation? This is something they can handle, because they already know the answer. When they ask again, they're checking to see if the truth has changed in the last 30 seconds. They're testing the permanence of the world. Every time you give the same response with that same familiar tone, you're providing a tether. You're proving that the environment hasn't shifted while they weren't looking. For a brain that is only 48 months old, the laws of reality are still drying like wet cement. They need to keep touching it to see if it's still solid. There's a very specific look on a child's face when they get to that 5th or 6th repetition, a slight tilt of the head, a tiny pause before they speak. They are anticipating you. Most of the time, children are just guessing at how life works, and they're usually wrong. They think the moon follows them. They think the shadows move on their own. But with a repeated question, they finally get to be right. They predict your answer, you say it, and for a brief second, they've mastered a piece of the universe. There is an immense psychological relief in that. It's a click moment. It's the feeling of a prediction coming true. It builds a sense of confidence that the world is actually a place they can eventually understand. One small repetition at a time. I've noticed this happens most when a house is noisy or something is slightly off. Maybe there's a suitcase by the door, or the afternoon light is hitting the floor in an unfamiliar way. The child isn't actually looking for data about the cat or the weather. They're using your voice to steady their own internal tempo. It's a vocal anchor. They are using the rhythm of the question and the answer to regulate their own nervous system. And they're studying you, too. They see the tiny tightening in your jaw when you get to the 7th repetition. They hear the slight edge in your voice, the way your pitch rises just a fraction. They're learning where you end and they begin. They're gathering data on how people work. How much pressure can a social boundary take? It's not a game of annoyance. It's a quiet, clinical observation of cause and effect. We do this as adults, too. We've just learned to hide it better. We check the same 3 apps on our phone over and over, even though we know nothing has changed. We reread an old message or rewatch a movie we've seen 10 times. We aren't looking for new information. We're looking for that same hit of certainty. We're looking for a home base because the rest of the world feels a bit too chaotic. A child is just more direct about it. They aren't trying to be deep or difficult. They're just doing the heavy lifting of making sure everything is exactly where they left it. Eventually, the loop stops. They'll open their mouth to ask again. Then they'll blink, look at the sofa, and just walk away. They remembered. They found the floor. They finally believe that the cat is actually where you said she was. It makes you wonder at what age we stop needing to hear someone else tell us that the world is still there, or if we just spend the rest of our lives finding quieter, more complicated ways to ask the same questions until we finally feel okay.